ACC tip-off has come and gone in Charlotte this week. Media days have gone by. A lot of hype around this Duke basketball team, but still trying to figure out who are these starters going to be.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man. The Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Hope that you're doing well here today on Thursday, October 9th, 2025. As Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. On today's show, we'll continue to talk about this basketball team ahead of the 2025-2026 season. Just this week, we saw John Shire, Caleb Foster, and Malik Brown go through the Media Day festivities in Charlotte in preparation for this upcoming year. A lot of talk right now over the depth of this Duke team and who in particular could make up the starting five. So we'll dive into that discussion with our pal Kevin Connelly over at Ball Durham, and he's got the Believe in Duke Football podcast as well. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. You can watch our show each and every day on YouTube as well. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like these videos, share it with your friends as we're continuing to grow our community here with Locked On Blue Devils. We're back. Basketball season is in full go. Before we know it, we'll have the UCF exhibition. Then Duke will take on at Tennessee and Knoxville. And then you've got the opener in Charlotte taking on the Texas Longhorns. All that and more coming up on today's show as we welcome in our good friend Kevin Connelly back with us again this week. Kevin, it is great to see you, my friend. I hope that you're doing well. And, now that we've had Media Day come and go, we had Countdown that you and I talked about a little bit earlier in the week. It feels like we're full go, man. Basketball season has arrived.
We're ready to roll, JJ. I think that next big date on the calendar is October 21st, if I'm not mistaken, the exhibition game against UCF. So going to be a long 2.5 weeks, I guess. But just knowing that all these media days are out of the picture right now. But no, certainly the countdown is on, I think, not just to the exhibition games, but to the start of the regular season, which we are finally under 30 days away from.
Yeah, and in some ways, everything is earlier than ever, right? John Shire talking about this is the earliest that Countdown to Craziness has ever taken place. It's the earliest ACC tip-off and media days have ever taken place. And now we sit here. We've got 12 full days until we actually see Duke in that exhibition game against UCF. And then a few days after that is when they take on Tennessee. So now that they've gotten those portions out of the way, we can kind of go back to the talk and the speculation and the practice settings and that sort of thing. It is kind of odd how the calendar shaped up.
Well, it's kind of weird, JJ. I was actually having this discussion with somebody just a couple of days ago, and it wasn't necessarily about college basketball, but it's funny that you bring this up. I mean, I got to show out. I'm here wearing my New Jersey Devils sweatshirt because they start their season tonight on Thursday against your Carolina Hurricanes.
Yes.
And it's weird how the NHL is starting their season a couple of weeks earlier because we have the Olympics in the winter, so they have to build in 2 weeks for players to go over to the Olympics and play. So they're starting their season earlier, so it still ends at the same time. But for college basketball, that's not really the case, right? The Olympics don't affect college basketball. So the fact that everything really in the preseason has come earlier for Duke, I do agree that it's a little bit strange that we saw Countdown at the beginning of October and then ACC Media Days right after that. And then I think Duke had their own team media day where the local media was there doing interviews and stuff. They had that like the second day of official practice. So everything came very, very early for this team. So now we're kind of in that sit and wait mode and back to what we were in July and August of breaking down practice videos for the next couple of days.
Yeah, now it's just speculation, right? And I kind of like it. Now that this is out of the way, the team, in a sense, they go back into the lab, Kevin, and now they get to really put together this formula of what Duke basketball is going to look like in this 25-26 season. And that formula starts with the starting five at any game. You know, you walk out there, who are the five guys that are going to be on the court for you? There are a couple of known commodities within that starting five, right? Like at this point, we know Cameron Boozer is going to be there.
You sure about that?
I feel pretty good about that, Kev. I really do. You know Isaiah Evans is going to get to be out there to start the game. You know Big Pat, Slim Pat, whatever we want to call him these days, is going to be out there getting a ton of action early on for Duke. And then Caleb Foster seems to be on the fast track to take that job from Caden Boozer. And then there's one spot left to go. So it's interesting where the conversation is today and then what will happen over these next 12 days or so. And just because somebody starts, let's put this out there too, Kevin, just because somebody starts in one of these exhibition games doesn't necessarily mean that they will be the starters once the season tips off officially on November 4th.
I'll take it one step further. Just because somebody starts on November 4th against
Fair.
Texas doesn't mean they're going to be the starter on January 4th against SMU or whoever it is.
Yeah, for the biggest majority of the season. You're right, yeah.
Because, I mean, last year we saw Caleb Foster be a starter on opening night in the first couple of games of the season. And then obviously we saw him transition into a bench role as he had that roller coaster of a season. But I think you hit the nail on the head. I think 4 of these starting spots have been locked up already. I do think Caleb Foster is going to start in the exhibitions and on opening night, just being the junior, the captain, even though it seems like Caden Boozer is pushing him to the limits. And I do think there were some good things that we saw on film from Caleb Foster in the countdown scrimmage. And I think there were some really good things we saw from Caden Boozer as well. And then the others kind of slam dunks, right? Isaiah Evans, Cameron Boozer, and Pat Ngongba. I mean, those are no doubt starters. And I do think, obviously, there's some area that we can debate and discuss who that other 5th starter should be. Kind of at that, I guess you're going to – I would say more shooting guard position.
Yeah.
But I guess you could also say it's small forward, depending on where you want to peg Isaiah Evans into, if you want to call him a 2 or a 3.
Yeah. How about we just say wings? Make it easy on everybody. Who are your wings going to be for this team? And for a lot of people, you're right. I think it's come down to Dame Sarr or Nik Khamenia are kind of the biggest names that we see there. And there has been some buzz for Darren Harris and his ability to shoot the ball a little bit. And then Sebastian Wilkins down the depth chart a good bit, although you and I both believe that there's going to definitely be a role for Wilkins on this team this season. Just the options that are out there, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what Duke ultimately goes with, whether it be Sarr, whether it be Khamenia.
I would think Sarr has the inside track just because of that experience playing professional basketball. And even though he didn't have the best showing in countdown, you could still see the potential through the athleticism, some of the plays that he tried to make where he just didn't convert on. I mean, you could see that he has a knowledge for the game. I think the biggest surprise was, and I'm sure many people have seen it, the video that John Rothstein put out a couple of days ago after he saw practice. And he also kind of said that Sarr is likely the leader to get that final starting spot on opening night. But he kind of said that his biggest competitor was Darren Harris. And I think that took a lot of people by surprise, myself included, because we're kind of been talking about throughout the offseason and into the preseason here about where does Darren Harris fit on this team and how does he have a role? And I think the two of us included and a lot of other people were really impressed with what we saw from him at Countdown. Yes, being the 3-point shootout champion, but also what he did in the game, that first possession, hitting the elbow jumper, then hitting a 3-pointer. So I think we liked what we saw from Darren Harris, but the fact that John Rothstein even mentioned him in contention for being a potential starter on this team was surprising. And I think that's good for Duke, because I also think if he's in contention for that starting spot, according to Rothstein, he's going to get minutes on this team. And that just lengthens the bench. And I also think Darren Harris is a great bench piece, right? You come off the bench as a lethal shooter. The defense puts their antennas up right away anytime you get on the floor. They say, this guy can shoot. We have to defend him. And it just lengthens your roster a little bit more. So I do think he could be a really good piece off the bench, but certainly a credit to him and all the work he's put in this offseason if he's still even in contention for a starting spot.
You talked about the makes and the plays that Darren Harris had in Countdown to Craziness. Let's also remember a little bit later in the action, the defense tried to overcorrect. They fouled DH on a 3-point attempt, and shout out to him going to the free throw line, knocking down every single one of them. That's good to see the shooting stroke in a good spot from the free throw line for Darren Harris as well, as he finished with 8 points in the action. All right, let's go ahead and we'll take our first break here. When we return, I do want to continue talking about the mixture of starting lineup combinations that Duke could possibly have this season. This is Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at Quo. One of the tools that helps make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly known as OpenPhone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with the new company name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is that number one business phone system that streamlines customer communication. It works through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline. I love how Quo, formerly known as OpenPhone, lets your team share one number and collaborate on calls and texts like a shared inbox, so no customer gets left hanging. It makes it so much easy for your business. You're able to see why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly OpenPhone. Get started for free right now and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's QUO.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. The show today is also brought to you by our friends at Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Do you need parts for a project fast? Well, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Supply House is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Kevin Connelly's here with me today on the show. He's from Ball Durham, talking about Duke basketball right now ahead of the upcoming season. Saw media day yesterday, and Jon Scheyer chose Caleb Foster and Malik Brown to be his representatives. I was able to go and listen to several interviews that they had at the action yesterday, Kevin, and clear choices for Jon Scheyer. And I love hearing these guys talk about how committed they are to Duke, how committed they are to Jon Scheyer, and going to be the kind of older leaders of the bunch.
Yeah, the one thing that kind of stood out to me was, I guess we're in the day and age where you can ask the blunt question, but it wasn't word for word, but it was basically asking Caleb Foster, why didn't you transfer?
Right.
And I mean, his answer was like, I grew up a Duke fan. This is where I want to be. This is where I want to leave my legacy. And that's unheard of, especially in this day and age of somebody talking about a legacy at a certain school. I shouldn't say it's unheard of. It's very few and far between.
He added, I want to make it to the NBA. The starting five just got drafted. I mean, that was cool for him to shout, like, these are the future goals I've got in life, and this is the place for me.
Yeah, and a similar question, not specifically geared towards Caleb Foster, but in terms of roster construction and whatnot, was asked of Jon Scheyer as well. And he said, like, we get players or we recruit players that we believe in and then we have a plan for, and that they believe in us and they're willing to go by our plan. And I mean, they're not, obviously it happens and people transfer because that's a day and age that we're in. And you saw it last year, even with Duke getting a couple of transfers, and obviously their basically entire roster from a couple of years ago entered the portal. But I think Duke really isn't fully subscribing into this full transfer portal and turning over a roster every year. Now, they do that in the sense of getting highly sought after high school prospects and them leaving after 1 year because they're that good and they go to the NBA, and then you have to start from scratch again. But you're still going after a certain type of player, whether that be a transfer or that be a recruit, and you're hoping that they buy in to your plan that you have for them.
I'm excited to see these guys this season be the leaders of this Duke basketball team, talking about Foster and Brown specifically. Foster right now, a fast track to be one of the starters for the team. Malik Brown will absolutely play a role, and our biggest update is that it's real soon, within the next week or two. Duke does believe that Malik Brown's going to be back full go and ready to jump into competition. But again, we're talking about the fifth starter, trying to figure out who this guy could possibly be for Duke going into the season. And Jon Scheyer's been very complimentary of the class as a whole. When you talk about Dame Sarr, Nik Khamenia, highlighted the veteran of the bunch when you say Darren Harris, although as a sophomore with limited playing time, it's crazy to use that phrase for him. Looking at Sarr and Khamenia, as we broke down what we saw out of Harris from Countdown to Craziness, walk me through what you saw from Nik Khamenia at Countdown.
Well, it's kind of interesting because when he finishes with 8 points, I felt like it was a quiet 8 points. I don't know about you or the rest of your listeners. I mean, he did have a 3-pointer in the game, but it just didn't feel like it was as big of an 8 points as a guy like Darren Harris had. So I mean, Sebastian Wilkins isn't obviously in contention for this starting spot, but I think he's certainly in a battle for playing time. And I think it might be like, not saying one or the other, but could you see Sebastian Wilkins in some situations getting more playing time in a certain game over Khamenia or somebody like that? I think it's possible. And again, these are overreactions. This is reading way into a 12-minute scrimmage.
Absolutely.
But could Khamenia be in contention for that starting spot? Yes. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see multiple guys at some part in the season in that starting role. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if one day you look up and you see the starting lineup is a 2-guard set with Caden Boozer and Caleb Foster. Like, that wouldn't necessarily surprise me either. So I think Jon Scheyer has some options. I do think he has to be firm in whatever his decision is, because we talked about how difficult the schedule is, especially early in the season. And really, once they hit December, they don't get a break. So I do think whatever the decision is, it has to be made decisively, and Jon Scheyer has to stick to his guts just for that roster and playing time continuity.
Kevin, that's the best part, is that there are so many options, right? Because, we get back into a world maybe where you want Caleb Foster to just go be the scorer that he is. So you bring Caden Boozer in to set things up, facilitate. Then you're able to shift Isaiah Evans to that 3 position if you'd like. And then you've got Boozer, Ngongba on the interior as well. Although now, we didn't see as much from Dame Sarr in Countdown. Had a couple of shots altered at the rim, had a lay in there, did play the passing lanes fairly well in the defensive end of the floor. John Rothstein was in practice earlier this week with CBS Sports. He was very complimentary of what he saw out of Dame Sarr. And a lot of people, if you had to pin a front runner, there aren't crazy odds on this, but if there were Duke basketball psychos who are wanting to throw the betting odds down on that 5th starter, I think Dame Sarr would be the favorite in this regard. What do you make of him?
No, yeah, 100%. And you mentioned a quiet Countdown, and I agree, but there were some plays that he tried to make that didn't quite execute on, that just showed you the potential that he has. His athleticism, he's got great size. Obviously, as a freshman, everyone points out, oh, how's his defense? How's this or that? But given that he has the experience of playing internationally and playing professionally at Barcelona and that stuff, I'm not concerned about his defense. He's going to tower over some guys that he's defending just because of the size, the height, the wingspan, all that. I think he has the makings of a really, really good player. And don't forget, JJ, I'm someone who said, going back to June, July, and August, give this guy time just because he has to adjust to college basketball in the United States and how it's played. So I'm still very high on Dame Sarr, but I will just say, just give him a little bit of time to adjust, get used to everything out there. And I think you'll see a very different Dame Sarr in 2.5 or a week and a half when Duke plays UCF in the scrimmage.
Going to be a lot of fun to see how all of this comes together for Duke, and kind of what the starting lineup they end up going with is. Again, we'll play the waiting game. We'll wait 12 more days until we get Duke in action in that exhibition against UCF. We'll also be waiting for Duke football to be back on the field, as the Blue Devils, with the 4-2 record, have found themselves in their bye week. We'll talk about Manny Diaz squad when we return. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You could feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move or be moved, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. The show today is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and with the NFL season being here, FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It's Thursday, so we've got Thursday night football tonight, a classic NFC East rivalry game. The Eagles and the Giants, the Philadelphia Eagles, favored tonight on FanDuel by 7.5 points. Exciting action there. Makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something riding on the action. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today and get started. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, Kevin Connelly's here with us from Ball Durham. We're talking all things Duke athletics, and now want to shift our gears to what's going on with Manny Diaz group going into the bye week, Kev. So different setup after 6 games. Duke's got a 4-2 record. We'll see a full slate of college football this Saturday, and Duke will not be a part of the action. A well-earned kind of bye week, and it's nice. You played half your schedule so far. You get an opportunity to get off the feet a little bit this Saturday for the club.
And you get off your feet going into your biggest game of the season. So you get a chance to reset, get a couple of guys who are banged up, get them healed up, and then once practice begins on Monday, you're ready to go into that Georgia Tech game. So a disastrous first 3 games, a great next 3 games, and you get yourself a week off trying to finish strong here because, JJ, as I've said, and I've told you and I've said this on numerous programs, if Duke wins, they could consider themselves perhaps in the driver's seat to make the ACC Championship game, which was unheard of if you said that in early September. So one of the biggest games in recent memory for the Duke football team, in my opinion, is coming up next Saturday against Georgia Tech at home.
Yeah, it's crazy to look at it in kind of quarters of the season so far, right? 12 games, first 3 games, first, second games, as you talked about, 1-2 and then 3-0. Now you've got the bye week before you play Georgia Tech, and then again, the oddity of the Duke schedule. They've got another bye week immediately after that where they don't play before they take on Clemson. It's insane to think about how you perfected this second quarter of the year with 3 wins, all of them being in conference play. So many different guys offensively clicked, so many big-time plays from the defense. They actually forced turnovers, which they hadn't done in the first quarter. I mean, it's really, really difficult, Kevin, to be too critical of the second quarter of the year of this Duke season.
Yeah, and I was very critical of the first quarter.
Sure.
And I think you had to be. But again, I've talked about the past couple of games, especially the 2 road games against Syracuse and against Cal. And I credited Manny Diaz for having this team ready to go. And this team had some toughness, and they were able to respond to adversity. I think this game going into Georgia Tech, you mentioned the oddity of the schedule. It's a bye week before and it's a bye week after. So you're playing basically 1 game this month,
Yep.
even though I guess it's technically 2 because Cal was that first weekend of October. So you need to have your team fully bought in. You need to have their attention. You can't be looking to another bye week. You can't even be fully resting this week. Count this as a full game week of prep for Georgia Tech, and then use your bye after Georgia Tech, where you can really take a deep breath and reset before you go into Clemson. That's how focused this team has to be. And you hope that they get a good crowd, because I know that game time was announced for 12 o'clock. I'm sure people would have preferred it being a primetime under the lights game at Wallace Wade. They're going to need everybody there and supporting, because Georgia Tech is a heck of a team. They have a heck of a quarterback. He's really difficult to stop in Haynes King. So Duke's going to have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, you'll get the breakfast food tailgates all throughout the parking lots there outside Wallace Wade, and then you enjoy a little lunchtime action with Duke and Tech next week. And for Georgia Tech, much like Duke, the top of the Duke scouting report right now is quarterback Haynes King, and rightfully so. For Tech, it's Darren Mensah. These are different quarterbacks in so many ways, right? Like you see Haynes King use his legs far more frequently than Darren Mensah. But Georgia Tech's going to do all they can to stop our guy, to stop our quarterback.
Well, he's a gunslinger, and I would say it was much easier to stop this Duke offense a couple of weeks ago, but you're finally seeing a balanced attack running the football. They've done a great job running the ball over this 3-game winning streak in ACC play, and that has to continue against Georgia Tech in a couple of weeks because it takes a lot of the pressure off of Darren Mensah. Now, he's still having really good performances, but it's very clear when Duke has won and when Duke has lost. When Duke has lost, he has thrown the ball 34-plus times in a game. He threw 34 passes against Illinois, threw it 51 times against Tulane. Against NC State and against Syracuse, he threw it 28 times, and against Cal, he only threw it 30 times. So the rushing attack is so key to have a balanced offense and to keep opposing defenses on their toes, because when you're able to have balance offensively, that's a winning recipe in a football game.
Okay, then we talk quarterbacks, and JKS at Cal, really talented freshman, but the lefty stayed in the pocket a whole lot, was able to make tons of completions early. That's been his MO throughout the season, is just being the super accurate passer. And as we mentioned, Haynes King, he's not afraid to use his legs, get out of the pocket, run around, and hopefully that Duke front is ready to play a little old-fashioned game of tag from time to time, chase this man down, and make his life as difficult as possible.
Yeah, I think discipline is going to be the biggest key on the defensive side of the ball. And Haynes King is a guy that does get beat up a lot because he's used so much. I mean, in their biggest games, he runs just about 20 times per game. He ran 19 against Colorado, 25 times against Clemson, 21 times in an overtime win against Wake Forest.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
He's
so
a
like
quarterback.
I mean, he can get worn down, and sometimes you watch him play and you're like, how much gas does this guy have left in the tank?
Yeah.
But somehow he always finds a way to finish things out. I mean, he gets banged up. Georgia Tech sometimes sits him, like against Gardner-Webb. They kind of pulled the plug on him and put their backup in to play a game against Gardner-Webb. They didn't really press him that much in a win against Temple. So certainly something to watch if you're tuning into Georgia Tech this week against Virginia Tech, a game that I think the Yellow Jackets should win pretty handily. And just see how much they want to use him going into that game against Duke, because Georgia Tech also has a chance to get to 3-0 in the ACC this year. And both teams, whoever wins, is going to feel like they have the legitimate inside track at getting to the ACC title game.
Well, we've got a fun, exciting bye week here to enjoy without Duke football. We'll get a little break from the Duke basketball action like we talked about. But before you know it, it's going to be tons of games, tons of results, tons of things to talk about. And speaking in tons, I know there's a lot of content that you're putting out these days, Kevin. How can people support you?
Yep. Go over to balldurham.com. Can see all my written Duke basketball content over there. And then come listen to the Believe in Duke football podcast, where you can find on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. Obviously talking Duke football, but talking a ton of Duke basketball nowadays as well. So come listen to that. We have episodes right now every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I'm really excited about both and appreciate everyone coming to support.
Great to see you, Kevin. We'll talk again soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, Kevin Connelly joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and that's going to bring us to a close here on today's show. Be sure to subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. We're on Instagram and TikTok as well. Just search Locked On Blue Devils. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this video, share it with your friends, and let us know in the comments down below if you're an everydayer. Shout out to all my everydayers out there. Appreciate you guys for making Locked On Blue Devils what it is here today. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.